Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Mythgard Academy. My name is Corey Olson. This is session number 5 of our discussion of Inferno. Before we get started tonight, I just wanted to remind folks, first of the exciting announcement I made last week. We have officially launched to the world our new Signum Academy clubs. Extracurricular programs for kids from third grade, about age 8, all the way up to 18, all the way up to the end of high school. We really wanted to make these available to folks because I know that a lot of families have been really suffering from kids not having the same kind of access to fun extracurricular stuff. It's hard enough to do school online, which many are still doing. But to not be able to do the sort of the fun extra stuff, and of course, a lot of the intellectual enrichment that came through those programs, a lot of that has been lacking for many people this year. And so we have opened up our Signum clubs. And these are, we've got a book discussion club. We've got creative writing workshops. We have immersive conversational language discussions. Spanish is the language we're starting with. We'll add more as we go. And then also our translation clubs, where folks are kids are going to start learning Anglo-Saxon, which is, I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. So anyway, lots of really fun things happening there. I just encourage people to check that out, tell friends and family about it. Love to kind of spread the word about this as we go. I think that this program has a lot of potential and is something that I think will really be a big help to a lot of families. So I'm really excited about it. So that's the big fun thing that's happening. I wanted to remind folks also, we've got, of course, a couple holiday things going on. We have our annual holiday special, our holiday gift certificate special for anytime audits. If you want to give the gift of anytime auditing, it's a really wonderful geekdom gift to folks who, really love the stuff. Basically, you get access to all of the course materials for any one of the courses in our catalog that's listed there. You can go search through our catalog and look and find almost all of our courses we've ever offered are included in the Anytime Audit program. So you can go in and order a gift certificate and give that gift certificate to friend or family for holidays this year. So that's we're having there's a special price for the gift certificate. So which is a discounted price from our normal Anytime Audit tuition price. So don't forget that. And we have a couple new holiday designs in our Signum store as well. Do check out our Signum store. Lots of really, really fun Christmas ideas there too, of course. All right. That stuff said, let's get back to gluttony. Which is, of course, a very timely sin to be discussing in the immediate aftermath of Thanksgiving. So, yes, Carolyn says it was wise to save most of the gluttony discussion for after Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think it'll hit us a little bit harder now, I think, than it might have before. So you'll remember that where we ended up, we were almost to the middle of Canto 6. And the interesting thing that I was sort of tracing there was the fact that we were not given any hints. Well, okay, I can't say we weren't given any hints, but we were not told what the actual sin was in that circle. It's the third circle of hell. So we've had limbo, right? We've had the circle of the lustful with the lovers, and we talked a lot about the courtly love thing last time. And then we got into the next one with all the mud and the rain and the hail and the demon Cerberus, who's not a dog, but kind of might remind you of a dog, and explain at least why, Virgil and others characterized Cerberus as a dog, why Cerberus was traditionally understood to be a dog. And we're kind of seeing the horrible demonic truth behind the demon dog, three-headed dog Cerberus. Anyway, so we've seen those things, right? But it wasn't until after that that it was finally revealed that the sin actually being punished in that circle was gluttony. Now, one of the things that I really want to be thinking about today, and we've talked about it some last time, we talked about it especially with regard to the lustful, of course, was the connection between sin and punishment. And I want to be thinking about that a little bit more tonight. I haven't used this word yet. Some of you might have been surprised that I haven't used this word yet. It's a very famous Dante studies word, which is contrappasso. Contrappasso, which speaks about the relationship between the sin and the punishment. There's a reason that I haven't used that term, and that's I'm not a fan of the majority of the discussions of the contrappasso that I have ever heard. In fact, contrappasso, yeah, I can spell that, Jocelyn. Good question. Contrappasso. It's an Italian word, of course, as are most things in Dante studies, very understandably. So the contrappasso, I'm not a fan of the contrappasso. And mostly I find that very many discussions of the contrappasso I either disagree with wholly or find them very confused, or confusing at the very least. The thing that bothers me most about the discussions of the contrappasso is that sometimes people will talk as if the contrappasso means that a sin is being... It's sort of most neutrally described by saying the sin is punished in like an appropriate way, like a way that is suitable to that sin, which, in my opinion, says very little. Like, okay, but suitable in what way? Like, what exactly does that mean? That doesn't really tell me much at all, right? So, but then sometimes people will talk about the contrappasso as it means that the sin is met by its opposite, which is flatly untrue, and people will lump together what happens in Inferno and what happens in Purgatorio, and I'm like, holy cow, it's completely different. Like, it's like you've got to have a completely tin ear not to hear the difference, not to see the difference between what happens in hell and what happens in purgatory. And people just kind of lump them together and call it all the contrappasso. So sometimes they say it's the opposite, sometimes they say it's the same, sometimes they'll say both at once. They'll be like, contrappasso means that a sin is punished by something which is very similar to it or which is the opposite to it. And I'm like, which one is it? It can't be both. And are you saying there's no system, or are you saying you just don't understand the system? So like I said, I tend to get annoyed when people start talking about the contrappasso. So I've been kind of avoiding that. I'm not going to use that term a whole lot. I'm not saying that everybody misuses it, but it's just in my experience, which is not profound with Dante, but I have found that a deeply unhelpful term. It's almost like, and well, okay, I'll say it anyway at the risk of sounding uncharitable, which I don't want to be uncharitable, but it's almost like there are many people who feel by using an Italian term, they no longer have to like think about what it means. Like, if they have an Italian term to label it, then like it's okay if we're just using that, throwing around that term in completely vague, unspecific, and indeed often contradictory ways. But it's Italian, so I mean, it's just I think that's probably uncharitable, and it's probably not true of many people. But yeah, Tomas, exactly. It literally means counterstep, which is why, and I think it's actively misleading in Inferno, in particular. I'm willing to talk about a counterstep, Tomas, in that way, a contrappasso in that way, in Purgatorio. There, I think there's some sense to it, but not in Inferno. So I've not been talking about that because I wanted to. I don't want to go there. I don't want to encourage people to be thinking in those terms. Instead, what I do want to do is I want to be kind of, doing what I do, approach the text sort of from scratch and say, what do we see? What does it show us? What can we learn? So forget, the Italian terms, which may or may not be meaningful to you or to the person who's talking about them. And instead, let's just look at the text and what it says and look at the patterns that we can see. We started with one last time, which was the circle of the lustful, in which we had the gusting winds swirling them around all the time, right? Now, what do we see? And this is why I'm talking about this here in connection with gluttony, because it seems to me, as I've said, so conspicuous that he kind of withholds the sin for a really long time, right? It's not until, line 50? I mean, it's a third of the way through the canto that we learn what it is. And I can't help but feel that there's a certain, deliberate, I'm not sure how to characterize it. It's not a test exactly, but Dante is almost prompting. It's like he wants us to guess, right? Like we're supposed to figure it out. Almost. I'm not sure that he's like exactly manipulating us in that way. I'm not. Again, I don't want to be too proactive in what I'm asserting about Dante's intentions there, but it certainly sets us up to try to kind of understand. So it seems to me a really logical place to talk about this, right? Where we're supposed to, in some sense, right? The poem seems to be inviting us by withholding the description for so long, or the identification, I should say. It doesn't withhold description. That's exactly what it does give us. Instead of just giving the label at the beginning, and then in that way inviting us to be kind of more passive in our reception of it, by withholding it, he makes us curious, right? He makes us wonder, and therefore to be thinking about the cause and effect, right? About the relationship between what is happening here and the sin. We only learn about the sin after we have been given reason to see why it's fitting, so that it should, I think, if we're good readers, I think it should come across like what the effect should be when he finally says the word gluttony there in, about line, 52 or something like that. Then our reaction should be, oh, right, that makes sense. Now it fits, right? Now I see how it fits. Even if we didn't figure it out before, we don't have to guess it in advance necessarily, but it should fit, right? So how does it fit? What have we seen? Let's recall. Can we recall? Give me observations. What did we, in the first 50 lines, what are some of the things we were told again? We were told it's raining constantly, right? So there's water all over the place. What else? What were the other important things that happened in those first 50 lines, those descriptions? Anyone remember? I know, it was like a week ago, right? And there's been so much turkey between now and then, but still. Okay, yeah, rain and mud. Yeah, lots of mud. Cold. Yeah, Stephen, the shades were sort of not very recognizable, right? Hail, right? Not just rain, but hail, Jocelyn. That's right. That's right. And it was dirty, right? The hail itself and the rain itself is dirty. So it's not just that it's making mud when it hits the ground, right? And stink, right? There was smell. It all reeked. The rain reeks. The ground, the snow that comes down reeks. It's all horrible. And then there's David. Yeah, that really important point. Throwing the mud to Cerberus, who eats it. And if there is anything, I think, that should provide the clearest clue, like if we are going to guess what the sin is, and we're good readers of Dante, which means we should also be good readers of Virgil. I'm sorry, but it really is kind of like something Dante would have assumed, right? So I know none of us are particularly good readers of Dante in this way, but nevertheless, I told you the one important detail, right? That moment of wadding up the mud as Virgil does, right, and throwing it into the mouth of Cerberus, who eats it and then falls asleep, is a recapitulation, one of the very clear recapitulations of scenes from Aeneid 6, the descent into the underworld, Aeneas's descent into the underworld. But the key, right? The key is the difference, right? That's where I think the really important clue lies. In the Aeneid, Cerberus is put to sleep and thus fails in his job as guard dog and enables them to pass. This is a trick the Sibyl is able to play on him. Why? Because he's gluttonous, right? Which is as much as to say he's a dog, right? This is why dogs are notoriously easy to poison, right? You just give them something in anything vaguely appetizing, and they'll eat it right up, right? I mean, that's mostly how dogs very often are, and that is that's a kind of a symbol, right? That's a kind of that image of throwing the cake to Cerberus, which is, it's a cake when in the Aeneid, right? The Sibyl throws him a drugged cake, which he eats and then falls asleep. Cerberus, that is, in the Aeneid, is ultimately sort of betrayed by his gluttony. Yeah, I hear that. Jocelyn says, I have to say my dog will eat dirt if I give it to him. I can imagine it. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, and Arthur, I know that he's a worm here. I'm still talking about the Aeneid, right? In the Aeneid, he's definitely a dog, and he is thrown not dirt but a cake, and he gluttonously eats it and then falls asleep right afterwards. So first, that scene is recalled to us, right? And that's the only thing. There's nothing else. There is nothing else that explicitly recalls eating, right? I mean, there's no connection explicitly to gluttony at any point in the first 52 lines, apart from Cerberus, right? And again, less even what we see here than in the Aeneid, right? But remembering that passage from the Aeneid and the gluttonous eating of the cake by Cerberus, we then see that moment recapitulated, but it's different, right? He's not a dog anymore, and he's not even he is, compared to a worm, Arthur, called a worm, but he's a demon, right? I mean, he's a little bit dog-like, right? He sounds like a dog, and he's got the three throats, and he is so he's dog-like and he's worm-like, but he's a demon, right? And yet, once again, he eats greedily what is thrown to him and falls asleep again. So the act of gluttony is recapitulated, but this new time, the act of gluttony is even more base and sort of appalling. I mean, it's mud, and it's not just any old mud, right? I mean, the mud is hideous here. Like, the mud is foul, reeking filth here. It's just been described how horrible and bad smelling it is, right? And it's that stuff that Virgil, wads up and chucks into the mouth of Cerberus, which he, as soon as he gets it, he greedily eats it, without any regard for what it actually is. Like, anything that gets chucked in his mouth, he will happily eat, right? So we see the gluttony of Cerberus, the original Cerberus, Virgil's, the Aeneid Cerberus, right? It's hard talking about Virgil, the writer of the poem, and Virgil, the character in the poem. The Aeneid Cerberus, his gluttony, which is a perfectly understandable kind of gluttony, right? Not only is it totally very true to how, in fact, dogs act, right? Throw a dog something tasty and they'll snap it right up, even if it's laced with drugs. That's, of course, how I medicate my own dog, right? So, absolutely. We get that repeated, but it's not just repeated, right? It's amplified. And the element of it that it's no longer understandable. It's no longer a dog acting like a dog. It's a demon, right? And it's no longer a cake. It's no longer something appetizing. It's just mud. But that mud itself sort of sates him and neutralizes him, right? The element that remains, right? He's no longer a dog acting like a dog. He's no longer eating a cake. The one element that connects the two, apart from the name, which is the thing that makes you connect the two in the first place, right? But the one thing that connects the two of them is the mere desire to eat, right? The mere, frantic consumption of whatever is chucked in its mouth. And so that does help to give to sort of isolate it in a sense, right? Isolate the sin. What is going? So we do have. It is so for me. It's primarily Cerberus, or at least it's first and foremost Cerberus and the Cerberus incident. That when Ciacco says the damning sin of gluttony, makes me say, "Oh, right, okay, that makes sense." Right? It makes sense how Cerberus has been made into a kind of symbol of this sin in the middle of it. He's like the figurehead almost for this particular kind of sin. He's almost like a kind of extreme of this particular sin, and therefore helps us to understand the people, right, and to kind of contextualize the people and what's going on with them. But David, you're right. The sinners are also compared with dogs, which makes the typical gluttony of dogs seem quite apt. Absolutely. And Jameson, see, I agree with you. This is an interesting little footnote that we should make along the way here, right? Who is the kind of paradigm of gluttony in the circle of gluttony? It's the demon, who is, remember, he is the act of punishment. He's clawing at the sinners, right? The shades. He is tormenting the shade. He is the agent of torment for these shades, right? But he himself is guilty of this same sin. He himself is also in torment. I mean, he's in that circle also. There's nobody raking his back with claws. But there's more than one way to punish the gluttonous, I suppose. But he's still here, right? He's still, and again, that act of him consuming the horrible stinking mud. And I hear you, Karita. My dog too. Karita says, I say the mud stinks. She says, I immediately think of how desperately my dog wants to get into the litter pan for my cats. Yes. I know it is. I'm not saying that's undog-like to quite enjoy even seeking out and eating horribly foul-fitted, stinking things. Karita, it makes me think of the story of Rousby Woof and the fairy wog dog in Watership Down, but it also makes me think of my own dog too. But anyway, yes. So what we do see, and Jameson, that this is where I definitely agree with you, and this is the pattern that I think we're seeing already between the second circle and the third circle, is this continuous recapitulation of the sin, right? Those who surrendered their reason to their passion and allowed their passions to, just followed their passions without pulling back on the reins with their reason like they're supposed to do. They just let themselves follow their passions, are now tumbled about by this wind, and they have no control over, their bodies and where they go. The gluttonous, right? Well, certainly Cerberus as representative of, as the kind of chieftain of gluttony here, his own eating of the muck seems to recapitulate the same thing. And the fact that it is muck, and this gets me then back to, okay, why the rain? Why the mud? Why the stink? Like, why all this stuff? why is it that we get this exact atmosphere, right? And the okay, once we kind of make this, once we're kind of given this connection, and especially with the way that the muck, the biggest clue I think that Dante gives us for sort of parsing this on a moral allegory level, is the use of the mud itself in place of the cake. He's juxtaposed there a desirable food stuff. Maybe it was only desirable for dogs. Maybe it was like, the milk bone of the underworld that she threw to the dog. But it sounds like it sounded like the kind of cake that would have been offered during an offering, a ritual offering to the gods in Rome. Or like one of the cakes that was, sort of set before the sacred chickens or something like that, Anyway, it's a cake, and I know it's not like a layer cake with candles on top, but still a desirable food stuff, right? So you got on the one hand the tasty cake, which is given to Cerberus in the Aeneid, and then you've got the horrible, vile, stinking muck in which the sinners are almost immersed, right, and which is continually rising as the rain falls in this steady stream. Those two things are juxtaposed by that act of throwing to the Cerberus demon. So the food object, right, a desirable food object, the kind of food object that might tempt one to gluttony. I can personally imagine several food objects from my recent experience that might tempt one to gluttony. Boy, this is a super awkward class to teach the week after Thanksgiving. It really is. I guess really apt, but that I think is supposed to be the kind of challenge here, right? At the end of the day, those who are here for the damning sin of gluttony are people who have chosen, base things over higher things. Like really, like you prioritized food. And I can't help but think this is just a personal association. I'm not saying necessarily that Dante is intending us to go this direction, but it almost, once the sin of gluttony is revealed, I can't help but think of associate everything that's described here with like the actual digestive process itself, the horrible, stinking, mucky fluids and everything. It's like they're kind of locked into the midst of that whole process. Like this was to you the most important thing, right? You subjected everything else in life. You subjected everything else to this, right? You said that your food was like more important to you. It was more important than charity. It was more important than you prioritized the pleasures of the table over most everything else. Okay, we're just going to kind of lock you in the midst of that. At the end, it's just like gluttony is one of the sins of the flesh, and in a ways, it's one of the most fleshly of all of the sins of all three of the sins of the flesh. Remember, that's gluttony, lust, and sloth. Are the three. Carrie says, so now you are the large intestine. Exactly. Now you are the large intestine. Yeah. That's and yeah, Michael, I agree that smell seems especially significant. All five senses are assaulted, but the inescapable smell is so connected to the ideas of taste and appetite. Yeah, Michael, and I can't help but feel that. I remember they're like face down in the mud, right? So, it's almost like their faces are being pushed into this, right? Like this, it's all about, it's and again, is that a reversal? Like you could consider it a kind of reversal, right? Like you partook of, delicacies in life, and now instead you're surrounded by foulness and filth. You could see that as a kind of reversal, right? But I don't think that it is. I don't think that that's the point here, really. They are like the lustful. To quote the New Testament, they have their reward, right? They get what they chose. What the lovers chose was passion, right? They chose passion over reason. And as a result, they have it. That's one of the reasons that I think it's so poignant that Paola and Francesco are together, right? I mean, you'd think that like the ultimate punishment for those lovers would be eternal separation, right? I mean, and one could be tempted. Indeed, as I said last time, many have been tempted to see the end of Paolo and Francesca almost as a kind of happily ever after story, right? But at least they have each other in hell, right? Death can't conquer love. So there we go. It's cheerful, isn't it? It's not cheerful, right? They are not happy, despite the fact that they're still in each other's arms, right? They have, in a sense, what they chose. Now they spend the rest of eternity understanding what it is that they chose, right? And what they've given up in order to get it. And the same, I think, is true here. So, I mean, again, is it a kind of reversal in some ways? But to me, that doesn't seem to be the real essence of it. Bruce, they are like pigs wallowing in the mud. Yes. That's an interesting way of thinking about it, Stephen. In life, even gluttony was somewhat blessed by the tastes and odors and things that God had intended for foods to have. In hell, the sin has been sort of purified by being stripped of the godly stuff it was blessed with in life. Yes, Stephen, exactly. I mean, all of those sins, and in many ways, I think this is safe to say. Sorry, I'm like, what would Aquinas say? But I think it's safe to say that especially the sins of the flesh they are especially, what's wrong, the number one thing that's wrong about the sins of the flesh is that they are exploitations of blessings. They are good things. Like, there's nothing bad, intrinsically bad, about eating food, about resting, or about having sex. None of those things is evil. And everybody, all of the medieval moralists, are quite clear on that fact, even the sex part. Those things are, and God gave them to be pleasures. Like, as Stephen, as you say, he blessed all of those things, right? The sin lies in the unrestrained exploitation of them, right? To choose to prioritize the pleasure derived from these, the pleasure which God has attached to all of these things, right? I mean, he made food tasty, he made sex pleasurable, he made rest a good thing, right? All of these things are goods. They're designed to be. Again, all the medieval moralists agree these things. Okay, most of them agree. They're always crazy folks, but most of the medieval moralists agree that that God designed these things for our blessing, right? But when you take them and you misuse them, when you enthrone them in the central place and you say, this is what I'm all about, right? I'm gonna make my life about, the pursuit of these different pleasures at the expense of the other things that I'm supposed to be doing. That's where that's the danger. That's where the sins of the flesh come in. So I like that reading, Stephen, that idea of a kind of a purification, right? That this is what they have brought them. This is what they were choosing, right? It's like, now they confront directly, without disguise, without veil, without the kind of trappings that enable self-deception, right, into thinking you're not doing anything wrong. Marilyn, exactly. There is a kind of distillation to it. Yes. Absolutely. I agree. So that seems to me what I think. So that's my understanding of why we're seeing what we're seeing with the gluttonous here. And again, I really like how Dante kind of teases that, right? How he kind of teases that out, and then only at the end reveal. Well, not the end, but at the end of that whole like descriptive sequence, he tells us what it is. Now, about the dude, Ciacco, right? The conversation that they have. You'll notice what Ciacco and Dante talk about. Ciacco is the first of Dante's contemporaries that he meets, right? Sort of contemporaries. Ciacco says, like, yeah, we overlapped, right? Ciacco is a previous generation, but Dante was alive when he was alive. They're both Florentines. They both share the same kind of political climate. Okay. And they talk about exclusively about Florentine politics. And they've both been kind of done wrong by Florentine politics. What's super interesting to me is that they don't talk at all about gluttony. Gluttony is the one subject that never comes up. One of my favorite notes in all of Alan Mandelbaum's translation, in all of his notes, is the one from this passage where he talks about Ciacco, and he says, "It is possible that Ciacco was associated and it was famous in his life for his gluttony. But it is certain that after this appearance, he is certainly famous for his gluttony." That is, Mandelbaum is kind of gently and amusingly pointing to the fact that, like, there seems to be no external justification that we know of. I mean, there are no contemporary records being like, that Ciacco, what a pig he was, right? I mean, there's nothing. All we know from his conversation, and like primarily what we know from history, is his, like, the political stuff, right? What his political position was. And that, that I think is important. That is important. And it's especially important. I feel strengthened in my conviction that it's important by the cues that Dante has given us earlier on in his allegory about, in his work about the, like, multiple layers of allegory, right? That is to say, of course, we should pay attention to Ciacco's political stuff, right? Confession, I'm not particularly going to, but anyway, we totally should, like, especially if we were Dante's original audience, and I think he does really care. Dante really cares about Florence, and certainly, like, his number one audience of people that he wants to read this are, like, the good people of Florence, and so there's, like, lots of totally relevant and I'm sure super important and monumentally edifying lessons that he had, messages that he had for the good people of Florence and how they could best steer their way as a city-state in the immediate future, and how they might possibly atone for some of the obvious missteps that they as a city had taken, as, for instance, exiling Dante. But I'm less interested in that, as I've said. But here's the thing, right? It would be tempting to be like, okay, so when we're looking at the conversation between Ciacco and Dante, forget gluttony, right? Because he's obviously not interested in gluttony. And so therefore, why should we even be thinking about it? Well, there's an answer to that question, though. There's a reason we should be thinking about it in this text. And that reason is because we've already been prompted to look at things on multiple levels. And so, yes, the mere fact that their primary focus is on the actual political situation doesn't mean that we should not also be looking at this as some kind of with some kind of a sort of a moral overlay. But Yeah, yeah. Exactly, Stephen. Dante clearly placed this guy here for a reason. Had he simply wanted to have a political conversation and to have Ciacco utter the prophecies that he utters, political prophecies that he utters, yeah, he could have had that anywhere. He could have met him in limbo, right? He could have met him anywhere. He could have put him in purgatory. He could have, but he put him not just in hell, he put him here in the circle of the gluttonous. And I think that I think there's first and foremost political meaning to that. I don't think that the point he's trying, I don't think this is merely a kind of a smear campaign against Ciacco's memory, right? That he's just being like, oh, and by the way, boy, could this guy eat, right? This guy stuffed his face throughout his whole life. Am I right? Right? I don't think that's the context, the subtext here from Dante. I mean, is that true? Is that not true? I don't even know. We have no way of knowing. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't, though. Maybe, in fact, the reason that he's here is for gluttony on a kind of a deeper sort of level. Again, here I can't tell you nearly as much as somebody who is better at the contemporary Florentine political stuff. But my impulse here, what my gut tells me, which is a rather conspicuous way to speak in this particular canto, but what my gut tells me is that if we were to look at both the combination of what is known about the political career of this dude and combine that with what he says politically, the things that he actually utters to Dante, I think if we were to combine those two things together and kind of overlay that with the concept of the sin of gluttony, I think that we would see a pattern. I think that he is trying to characterize the particular, the sort of the larger failings of this guy as a person, his political, the failings with which his political perspectives are all tied up. He would. Those things are sort of associated, I think, that he would associate them. He wants to. I mean, he is associating them with gluttony. Carolyn, yes, he's a real person. He is a real person. He's a real historical figure, definitely. Yeah. Carolyn, that's a wonderful question. And I do not know the answer to that question. Her question is, why is gluttony a level down from lust? Is it because adultery is easier to fall into? Yeah, so first of all, I am not 100% sure that there is an absolute correlation, like that it's if we were to graph let's see, if we were to graph circles of hell along the x-axis and like seriousness of sin and severity of punishment on the y-axis, right? If that would be linear or if it would be rising in any form exactly, like I'm not confident that that's true. I mean, the ninth circle of hell is very bad, and just judging on that, and there are other places where we are given the sense, and we'll see them as we go. There are places where, we get these kind of warnings that, and what comes next? It gets worse, folks, right? I mean, we'll get kind of messages like that, which do suggest, Carolyn, that there is a kind of increasing severity. Of course, the placement of limbo in the first circle, which is obviously hands down the most mild, right, also suggests that kind of trend. But I'm not sure. I'm certainly not sure it's a linear trend in any case. There are many places where I'm like, well, I'd rather be there than the one above it for sure. I mean, and it's neither clear to me that Dante is intending for us to see this as a rapidly increasing severity of punishment, nor is it obvious to me that he is necessarily saying that each sin is worse than the other. These sins are in rank order, right? Getting more and more severe and more horrible as we go down. It might be. It could be. It could be that. But I'm not, as I say, I'm not convinced. At least I'm not convinced that it's linear in that way. Yeah, good, David. I agree. The description of the non-committal outside of hell proper seems much harsher than the upper circles. Yes, I agree. I mean, okay, as he says, if other pains are more, none's more disgusting. Okay, so the punishment of the gluttonous is more disgusting than the non-committal or the cowardly outside of hell. But I'm not sure it's worse. Yeah, I agree. Here's the one thing I would say. The one thing I would say is that although it is not clear to me that Dante is ranking things in a clear kind of stepwise order, or actually I guess the steps should be going the other way, shouldn't they? I'm not sure that he's ranking them in a clearly linear or stepwise order, but I do think what he is clearly doing is categorizing, right? He is identifying and delineating things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the order of presentation or even the order of structure, suggests that kind of linear progression. But there is segregation. There is identification. We're separating things out, right? And taking a clear look. Hell is not merely this big, giant, melting pot of sin. It's not, right? It's not just like, and there are the damned all in hell. No, everybody gets their different place, right? And each sin is identified. And to play back on the subtitle of my slide, which is technically slide 0 for tonight's class, because we talked about it last week, the revelation of each sin, right? And that seems to me especially important for the sake of, well, you think about this. For whose benefit? For whose benefit are these sins being revealed? I mean, like, through the structure of hell itself, right? Through the benefit for the benefit of the sinners. I mean, there's almost a sense in which that's true, as I've been talking about, right? Like, Paula and Francesca have eternity to contemplate what has happened now that they have essentially, in one sense of understanding it, gotten their heart's desire, right? And, so we could say, like, it's for their instruction, but it's certainly not for their benefit. I mean, they don't profit from this instruction in any way. They're not being corrected at all. And that's true not only because we know there's no, this is a dead end street, right? They're not gonna be getting better. They're not being taught lessons. They're not learning stuff, right? They have no hope. But they, and also, yeah, okay. So they, not only do they have no hope, but sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. But also, they don't even really seem to learn the lesson. Like, does Ciacco strike you as somebody who's really understood now? He sees his life much more clearly and understands about the gluttony. No, he does not give that impression at all, right? Neither do Paolo and Francesca. They still speak like courtly lovers. And speak with some satisfaction of the husband / brother who killed the two of them being punished further down in hell than they are, right? Somewhere else down in hell. But they have they repented? Do they now regret it? It doesn't sound like it, right? They're continuing to tumble around. So anyway, yes. It was, Stephen, it is ordered by a divine orderer, right? It is, we've got the high artificer who has made hell and who has sorted these things out. But of course, there's a sense in which it's not that Dante says this exactly, but there is somebody who learns the lessons that are being taught. If hell is organized in this way in order to teach a lesson, who is the only audience of that lesson? It's not the sinners. Again, they're not profiting from it. It's Dante. Yeah. He's the one who's being given the tour so that he can see and understand these. And us, of course, through him, right? It's not only for his, it's not, this adventure isn't organized for his sole benefit. But he's the instrument, right? This is his destiny. And in a sense, it's almost like, this is saying way too much. It's going way too far to spell it out in these terms, but it's almost like it's the destiny of hell itself to be seen by Dante. I guess I don't, it's not exactly like that, but do you see what I mean? There's like an element of that. There's it tastes just a little bit like that. Yeah, Michael says Minos's role to direct people to the level or to judge them, especially if someone could be in multiple levels at once. Michael, I think judge, first of all, he's a famous judge from mythological history. So him employing some actual judgment would seem to be appropriate. Also, the fact, Michael, that the sinners are depicted as confessing their sins to, they don't just come up with a label already, and he's just like dispatching them to wherever they're labeled, right? They first confess their sins to him, and then on hearing their sins, he's like, okay, yeah, you, Ciacco, gluttony for you. Because presumably, yes, they would have been guilty of many of them would have been guilty of multiple sins. Yeah, and then there's the tail action, Jocelyn, exactly. That's the mechanism, but he's not only a mechanism, right? That's the outward sign of his judgment, but he's clearly doing the judgment. Yeah, okay. And Gerald, you're right. Sorry, I had missed this comment before, but you're right that all the punishments are equally bad in the sense that they're permanently separated from God. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's there's certainly a sense in which every circle, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of another, right? Like, what does it really matter what circle of hell you end up in? You are, the point is you're permanently locked away without hope of redemption. So yeah, that's kind of the big, that's sort of the headline there. Yeah, and Gerald, you'd think that the sinners don't know the architecture of hell. That is to say, they've never been taken on a guided tour of hell, and yet they do seem to know it. Ciacco knows. Ciacco knows that some of it. Dante asks about these other dudes, right? And Ciacco tells him. I have an idea. How about I actually advance a slide? How about that? Let's actually look at Ciacco a little bit. Again, I'm not talking about all the political stuff, but I am interested especially in Dante's reactions to Ciacco. With this, his words, inciting tears, were done. And I to him, I would learn more from you. I ask you for a gift of further speech. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Tegaio? Tegaio? I have no clue. No clue. That utterly defeats my ability to pronounce Italian words. Farinata, men so worthy, Arrigo, Mosca, Jacopo Rusticucci. I can just get that one. And all the rest whose minds bent toward the good, do tell me where they are and let me meet them. For my great longing drives me on to learn if heaven sweetens or hell poisons them. And he, they are among the blackest souls. A different sin has dragged them to the bottom. If you descend so low, there you can see them. But when you have returned to the sweet world, I pray, recall me to men's memory. I say no more to you. Answer no more. Okay, so first of all, there is the request by Ciacco. Well, last of all in the passage, but first thing I want to talk about is the request by Ciacco, right? He wants to be recalled to men's memory. Well, all he asks of Dante, when you go back to the world, help men to remember me, right? Now, this is a distinctly double-edged sword in this case, right? On the one hand, Ciacco, I've got good news and bad news, right? On the one hand, everyone will always remember you, right? No question. Millions of people will read about you. But on the other hand, right, everybody is going to associate you with gluttony and be invited to imagine you face down in the horribly reeking muck for all eternity. So, okay, can do. Notice, though, that Dante weeps for him. I believe that's what inciting tears, I believe it's his tears that are being incited by Ciacco's words. And he, Dante, is, hungry for more information, right? I ask you for a gift of further speech. He wants to know where these 5 guys are, political figures from Florence. Tell me where they are and let me meet them. For my great longing drives me on to learn if heaven sweetens or hell poisons them. On the one hand, that curiosity is not going to be denied, right? I mean, he's gonna see these guys, at least some of them. I'm not sure that 100% of them are gonna come up, but I know Farinata will. But anyway, he's Ciacco says, if you descend so low, there you can see them, right? So his curiosity is going to be satisfied. It's not that he's simply denied this request, right? But Ciacco won't tell him. And I agree, David, it does seem to me too remarkable that Dante is asking Ciacco, surely Virgil would know where they could be found. Yeah, he doesn't ask Virgil. He doesn't ask his guide. The tears and his going to, because David, I think you're exactly right, his going to the damned soul, Ciacco, for guidance, essentially, instead of the sea of all wisdom, who is, as he will be called in a couple cantos, who is right there beside him, right? That's a bad look. I think it's a bad look. Is Dante connecting himself with Ciacco in some way? Well, he does sympathize with him, right? He is connected with, he does connect himself in a sense with Ciacco through his own pity, his own tears, on his behalf, as well as his implicit positive response to Ciacco's request. He will, in fact, heed his request and recall him to men's memory. He's going to include it. Here it is. He's included in the poem, right? So, yeah. That makes, notice Dante has not really distanced himself from almost any of the sins that we have encountered so far. The swooning seems to be the biggest giveaway, right? But here, I think there's some link there as well. Let's keep going. Because as they continue to walk through this circle, Dante has some larger Boethian questions to ask. So did we pass across that squalid mixture of shadows and of rain, and our steps slowed down, talking a while about the life to come. At which I said, "And after the great sentence, O master, will these torments grow, or else be less, or will they be just as intense?" And he to me, "Remember now your science, which says that when a thing has more perfection, so much the greater is its pain or pleasure. Though these accursed sinners never shall attain the true perfection, yet they can expect to be more perfect then than now." The sentence, the great sentence. Do we know what he's talking about? He's talking about, sorry, it's a Bible thing. There's going to be change in hell, right? They're not going to achieve salvation. They're not going to repent. But there is going to be a very significant change, a change of their state at the time in the future. And yes, the change of their state is going to be the last judgment. And what happens on Judgment Day? What's going to be different around in hell on Judgment Day? Yes, Carolyn, exactly. The resurrection of the body. People are going to get their bodies back. People are going to get their bodies back. And that is true of the damned as well as of the saved. Rather more attention tends to get paid to the resurrection of the body in the blessed saints. But the damned also are resurrected in the body. So it's going to... So he's wondering, when they get their bodies back, what's going to happen? Is that going to make it worse or better? Will these torments grow or else be less? Or will they be just as intense? Is it going to be, it's pretty much of a muchness, whether you've got a body or not. And Virgil says, when a thing has more perfection, so much the greater is its pain or pleasure. And then Virgil kind of plays on the word perfection, right? It's, on the one hand, perfection means becoming perfect, right? Being sanctified, being made whole. And complete in the sense of salvation, right? But there's also another sense of perfection, a sort of a lower sense of perfection in which, like, that which you are doing can achieve perfection, completeness, wholeness. Not that you are going to be made whole, not that you are going to be made perfect, but that the true sinners the accursed sinners will never attain the true perfection, yet they can expect to be more perfect than now. They will be more complete. So what's the answer to his question? Will these torments grow or else be less, or will they be just as intense? What's the answer? Can you parse Virgil's answer there? Worse. Much worse. Exactly. Much worse. Yes. Their suffering will become more perfect, David. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. They are suffering now, but their sufferings are still imperfect because they are incomplete. Their sufferings are incomplete because they don't have their bodies yet. When things are brought to the fullness, then their suffering itself will be perfected. So yeah, that's the answer to the question. We took the circling way traced by that road. We said much more than I can here recount. We reached the point that marks the downward slope. Here we found Plutus, the great enemy. First of all, another classic Dantean transition, right? Dante loves these little mini cliffhangers. The cantos in Inferno tend to end like classic Doctor Who episodes, right? Like always ending on some cliffhanger, which gets resolved in like the first, 30 seconds of the next episode. Right? It's exactly what the Inferno cantos are always reminding me of. And yeah, you're right, Stephen, that it is rather fitting since hell seems to have rather a lot of cliffs. Yeah, yes, it is on the edges of cliffs that often these things happen. Um, um, no, Arthur, I'm not suggesting a parallel between Virgil and any one of the Doctor's particular companions. Though I'm not suggesting, Arthur, that wouldn't be a very interesting kind of study to do, compare and contrast Virgil as Dante's companion, with, Sarah Jane Smith or Leela or somebody else. But still, I think it's, I'm not suggesting that. But our cliffhanger here, Plutus, the great enemy. Plutus is weird. I don't get Plutus. I don't get Plutus. He is on the one hand, it's Pluto, sort of. Like, Pluto is the god of the underworld. That's his Latin name. Hades in Greek, Pluto in Latin. And so that is kind of who this is. But again, I think what we're seeing, as we've seen already before, the pagans weren't just making stuff up, right? Virgil didn't make stuff up. The Roman mythology doesn't just make stuff up out of nothing, right? But it does kind of misunderstand things. Doesn't have the whole picture. Didn't have the whole picture, right? Can't blame them. They didn't have revelation, but they figured out a whole heck of a lot. So it's true that there is a Pluto or a Plutus, which I guess is the same person, down in the underworld. But it's not exactly, this is not like the husband of Persephone, it's not exactly the same. He's not running the show for sure, down here. But Plutus is also associated with wealth. There do seem to be two different figures, the god of wealth and the god of wealth, Plutus, the god of wealth, is the one that is where the word plutocrat comes from, right? The kind of vaguely, well, not very vaguely, actually, insulting word to call like a rich person, like a Vanderbilt era, millionaire. Anyway, but I agree, David, calling Plutus a god of wealth, the great enemy. He's the great enemy because he's like sort of the god of the underworld, or a major god of the underworld, or someone who has been taken to be the great god of the underworld. And I agree, associating that with wealth, which is the root of all evil, right? According to one understanding of that verse in the book of James. And the whole camel through the eye of the needle business, David, as you say, exactly. That stuff, it does seem it's not a bizarre juxtaposition, right? It's a little bit odd. I think what I find most odd about it is that Dante takes this quite major figure. I mean, like, if you told me in advance, like, we're going to meet Pluto, the god of the underworld, I'd be like, dude, I can't wait to see, like, Pluto on his throne. Are we going to get Persephone too? Like, what's going to... No, it's not like that at all, right? He's in, like, a dog. Well, a wolf, right? Pape Satan, Pape Satan Alepe. So Plutus, with his grating voice, began. The gentle sage, aware of everything, said reassuringly, "Don't let your fear defeat you. For whatever power he has, he cannot stop our climbing down this crag." Then he turned back to Plutus's swollen face and said to him, "Be quiet, cursed wolf. Let your vindictiveness feed on yourself. His is no random journey to the deep. It has been willed on high, where Michael took revenge upon the arrogant rebellion." So, Virgil puts Plutus in his place. the bizarre satanic invocation in the first line, which, by the way, nobody really understands exactly what that means. It's why he didn't translate it, because it seems, and yeah, I too have a hard time overlooking, Arthur, the apparent connection between Satan and the Pope. Pape, it doesn't just mean Pope, but I mean it's kind of close. So yeah. Carol, and yet we should be remembering the wolf from Canto 1, right? There seems to be a connection there. As notes will sometimes tell you, wolves get very famously associated in medieval moral allegories. The wolf is most commonly associated with avarice, which seems fitting, right? As we seem to be entering into a circle of avarice here. As we with Plutus, right? You know, we got Plutus, who's like a wolf, but he's just powerless, right? He's scary. You know, when just even going back to the previous, here we found Plutus, the great enemy, which sounds like the lead into a boss fight. Right. And then it starts off kind of scary, right? With this like eerie sounding satanic invocation, which again, even in Italian doesn't really make perfect sense. And then, he begins in his grating voice, and then he's just, Virgil just comes in and says, hey, pipe down. Well, he doesn't even talk to him first. First he talks to Dante, right? Don't let your fear, in the background while he's like, yelling scary things in his grating voice, Virgil in an aside is like, don't let your fear defeat you, right? Let's pay no attention to the cursed wolf howling over there. He is all bark and no bite. Valamoinen, I agree with you. So, but now Jameson, I do also agree that the god of wealth and a word which is, and pape, father, yes, which of course also is where the word pope comes from. So I mean that's yes. The juxtaposition of Pope, Satan, and wealth all in the same place. Coincidence? No, I don't think it's coincidence. Sorry, Jocelyn. Yeah, sorry. I indulged in a video game metaphor. Boss fight, just meaning like it sounds like it's setting up for this massive confrontation with like an incredibly intimidating, like this, a big important confrontation is going to happen, and it just gets kind of snuffed out. Virgil just sort of shouts him down, right? Be quiet, cursed wolf. Let your vindictiveness feed on yourself. Even like turning his back on him while, Plutus is in full cry, being like, no, don't worry about that guy. Right. So it turns out it's not a confrontation at all. He's just landscape decoration. Right. I mean, as far as they're concerned, his rebuke, Virgil's rebuke to Plutus, his is no random journey to the deep. It has been willed on high, where Michael took revenge upon the arrogant rebellion, is literally putting Plutus in his place. Where is his place? Oh yeah, hell. Why is he in hell? Oh yeah, because he got his butt kicked by Michael. Michael, very important, right? We got to know who Michael is. What Michael are we talking about here? This is the Michael, right? The archangel Michael. Gabriel's the archangel who gets all the fame, right? Everybody thinks about Gabriel because he comes up a lot and he plays a part in the Christmas story, so he's particularly famous. He's the one who appears to the Virgin Mary, of course. But Gabriel, of course, is not the only archangel. Nor is he the greatest of the archangels. The greatest, most important archangel is Michael. He is the captain of the heavenly hosts. He is the leader of the armies of heaven, and so he is the one who took revenge upon the arrogant rebellion. He is the one who is leading the charge when the rebel angels are cast out of heaven and down into hell. So he is reminding Plutus, the demon, who's another demon, right? Reminding Plutus, the demon, of when he got put into his place, and reminding and pointing out our authority comes from that same place, that same authority that cast you out and threw you down here. Yes, exactly. For Tolkien fans, he is the Eonwe of the heavenly host. Yes. Yes. Michael is to, okay. I'm not going to do the analogy. Never mind. But yes, he is the greatest in arms, that kind of thing. Exactly. Yes. And Jameson, also the defender of Israel. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. The other archangels? There are other archangels. That's two. Gabriel and Michael. Who are the other two? 4 archangels. Yes. Uriel, and Raphael. That's right. Uriel and Raphael. That's it. That's it. They get even less in the way of scriptural headlines. But yeah. 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 Okay. Anyway, sorry. We won't talk about them because they don't come up yet. Let's keep going. So, avarice, Plutus, greed. Okay, now hang on. Pause a second. This is where we've come now to the point where good Catholics say, wait a second. We did lust. We did gluttony. Where's sloth? Where's sloth? We're going straight to avarice? We're skipping sloth? I mean, okay. It's like one of the lamer of the 7 deadly sins, but still, it's one of the 7 deadlies, right? This is when the first time when it starts to become clear, we're not just doing the 7 deadlies. It's not organized that way. Because we've skipped sloth entirely. So, yeah, it doesn't work like we might assume that it works. Carolyn says, skipping sloth is good news for me. I hear you, Carolyn. I hear you on that. But let's read what happens down here in the 4th circle. Thus we made our way down to the 4th ditch, to take in more of that despondent shore where all the universe's ill is stored. Justice of God, who has amassed as many strange tortures and travails as I have seen? Why do we let our guilt consume us so? Even as waves that break above Charybdis, each shattering the other when they meet, so must the spirits here dance their round dance. Here more than elsewhere, I saw multitudes to every side of me. Their howls were loud, while, wheeling weights, they used their chests to push. They struck against each other. At that point, each turned around, and wheeling back those weights, cried out, "Why do you hoard? Why do you squander?" Okay, we'll come back to the hoarding and squandering. First, let's understand let's try to understand literally what he's describing, and then let's think about how he's describing it, the epic simile that he's using to describe it. First of all, population is way up, right? There are more spirits here than he's seen anywhere else, right? So this is a super popular sin, clearly, right? More folks here than there are in the lustful or in gluttony. And it's a circle, right? It's a circle, and you've got people pushing rocks, right? There are weights. He doesn't say rocks. Does he say rocks? He says weights. Okay, weights. They're pushing weights. They're rolling them with their chests, so which gives us an idea of how large the weights are, right? So they're using their chests to push. So I'm using my hands in my gesturing, which they shouldn't be. Like they're using their chests. So they've got their chests and presumably their faces pressed up against the rocks, which I'm assuming they're rocks, though it says weights. And they're going around in circles, but they're not just going around in circles like the lustful, right? First of all, the lustful are buffeted around by the wind. These guys are moving much more laboriously, right? And they go around, but they're going around in contradictory ways. So you've got two groups of them, and they go around in circles, and then they collide, right? They crash into each other. And then when they crash into each other, they all get on the other side of their rocks, and they go back the other way until they get to the other side of the circle, and then they crash again, and then they come back around and they push around the other side and they crash again. That seems to be what he's describing. As far as I'm understanding, that's what he is describing here. Oh, that's interesting, Stephen. Stephen says weights also puts me in mind of how metal money was measured. Yes, weights like in a merchant scale. Sure. Yeah. Interesting. That is interesting. Okay. So you've got two different populations. And the thing that we can see with these two populations, the number one thing that we see is they're all in the same boat, right? They're all in the same circle. They're all doing the same thing. So there's a uniformity here. Everybody is in a sense receiving the same punishment, even though they're divided into two separate populations and they're always moving in opposite directions. Yet they're both always moving in opposite directions, but neither of them is ever going anywhere, right? Because where are they going? In a circle, right? Well, not like they're not going around in a circle. They're only ever going half a circle and smashing into each other and turning around and doing half a diameter of a circle. So it's even like less satisfying than just going around and around in circles, right? Yeah. Okay. So we see again contradictory streams, right? In fact, in conflict with each other, like they're always crashing into each other, right? And yet they are also in crashing into each other. They serve as like part of each other's punishment in a sense. But they also are like they're part of each other's punishment, but they're all experiencing the same thing. There's like no real difference between them, right? And now, what's the simile? Even as waves that break above Charybdis, each shattering the other when they meet, so must the spirits here dance their round dance. Charybdis, huh? What's that? What's Charybdis, and why do waves break above Charybdis? The Pal of Scylla. Yeah, true enough. Yeah, the whirlpool from the Odyssey, right? So you've got Scylla, who's the monster on the rock, who if you get too close to Scylla, she'll like reach down and eat you. And if you get too close to Charybdis, she'll suck your ship down. So you gotta go very carefully between Scylla and Charybdis, and you're likely to get screwed either way. But it's better to, as Odysseus learns, to go close to Scylla because you'll lose like half a dozen sailors, but you'll still make it. Whereas if you go too close to Charybdis, your whole ship will be destroyed. So, the literal metaphor, if he were making an unepic simile here, right? The simile would be even as waves when they meet shatter, right? So it's like two waves crashing, and the place where I feel like I've seen this myself in my own experience, most with two waves, is like when you get waves breaking into sort of tide pool areas, or like among rocks, right, where the waves will come in, and the wave will get kind of funneled in by the rocks, and then the waves will kind of smack against each other and send water spewing up really high into the air. That seems to be what he's describing here. Waves breaking, but breaking against each other and shattering when they meet. So he's describing a really violent collision, which is a little weird to me, because you'd think if they're all using their weights to push their chests to push these massive weights, I guess maybe you could build up a little bit of momentum, but it kind of seems like you'd all be trundling around like trundle, 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 thud, right? And then trundle, 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 thud on the other side. But that's not what he describes at all, right? He describes instead like churning, 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 crash, and churning, 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 crash. I guess they get moving, right, with their weights. Okay. So they're not just plodding, right? They're not, it's kind of like Sisyphus, right? It's very reminiscent of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, who you may remember, is punished in the underworld in classical mythology by pushing the boulder up the hill. And every time it gets almost to the top of the hill, he loses his grip on it and it rolls back down the hill. And then he's got to start again, right? So it's like that both in the rolling large rock phenomenon, and also in the sense of futility, right? Because they never get anywhere. They roll their rocks and then they smash and then they turn around and do it again. Okay, so I think that the simile with the waves, definitely it suggests the violence of collision. And again, even like the splattering, right, effect. This is a violent collision. So they've got to build up some speed. It's not like, in this way, it is unlike Sisyphus, I think. Sisyphus. That's right. It's unlike Sisyphus, who's like laboriously pushing the rock up the hill, inch by inch. These folks get moving, right? These folks get moving temporarily. And then they crash. Okay. Okay. So, but now why Charybdis? Why Charybdis specifically? What is Charybdis? Danger to ships, right? Charybdis is the gaping maw. Right? Charybdis is like the bottomless. So Charybdis is like the Sarlacc in Star Wars, right? Charybdis she's underwater, right? But Charybdis is this ever hungry, never full maw that is always drinking, that is always consuming anything that comes near it. There's an element of, voracious and unslacking appetite about Charybdis. And I have to think that there's a reason he talked about not just waves crashing against each other, but waves that break above Charybdis, shattering the other when they meet. Jameson, exactly. If Michael is the Eonwe of the Christian afterlife, Charybdis is the Ungoliant. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So that's interesting, and I think relevant, right, to the sin here. Now back to what they shout. as they turn around, so when they meet each other, they crash against each other, and then there's a scramble, right? While they all, because presumably they fall down and stuff. It's a violent collision, right? So boom, and presumably like people are crashing into them from behind. I mean, it's got to be a fearsome tangle. But they've got to get up and they've got to get back around to the other side of their rocks and start pushing their rocks in the other direction. And as they do that, as they're mingling there at the apex, or what's the plural of apex? Apices? I don't think I've ever used the plural of the word apex. How exciting. Apices. Yeah. Excellent. At the apices of their turns here, they yell at each other. Why do you hoard? Why do you squander? There we go. So who are these people? What are their sins? What are their sins? Yes, the misers and the prodigal. That's who these people are. Those who hoard are misers, who hoard money and won't spend it. The prodigal are those who squander their money. The parable of the prodigal son has had the popularity of the parable of the prodigal son has had a rather perverse effect on the reception history of the word prodigal. Because of course, everybody focuses on the fact that like the story of the prodigal son is the story about the son who left his father's house and was really bad and then committed all these sins and then came back, repented and came back, right? So I remember very clearly as a kid, I associated the word prodigal. I thought prodigal meant, first I thought that prodigal meant like the prodigal son meant the son who came back home again. Like that's what it meant to be prodigal, was to, and that's not only what I gleaned from the story, not knowing that word in any other context than that story, but also the way in which it got, I heard it applied not only in conversation at times, but, at least in my family's crowd, but also in literature as well. People talk about, the prodigal son returns, right? It's like, okay, so see, it's about like, that's what it means. And Stephen, yeah, I think I was also confused by that too, that it is similar to the word prodigy, which is a good thing, and also often used of children as well, right? So I got a little confused by that too, I think. I do think that influenced me as well. But of course, when he is called the prodigal son, it has nothing to do with his repentance or his returning to his father. The prodigality of the prodigal son means his spending his father. He takes his father's inheritance, right? He goes to his dad in the parable in the New Testament, goes to his dad and says, give me my share of the inheritance now. I don't want to wait for you to die, right? Give me the inheritance that I would get, that I would normally get when you die. Give it to me now because I want to spend it while I'm still young. And then he goes off and he spends all of his money on riotous living, as it says in the King James, which I always loved that phrase, riotous living. So anyway, he blows. That's what makes him prodigal, right? That is wherein his prodigality lies. It is his blowing of the money. That's why he is identified as the prodigal son. Again, I was so confused about that for so many years. The miserly and the prodigal. Dante first links these two things, which seem to be completely opposites of each other. Somebody who blows all their money and spends all the money, and someone who hoards all of their money. Both of them, they seem to be completely opposite conditions. He links them. Now, the opposite orientation of them, right? The opposite orientation of them is noted, right? They are wheeling in different directions, right, on the circle. But at the end of the day, they're doing exactly the same thing, right? The kind of larger moral point that Dante makes here is that miser, prodigal, whether you're a hoarder or a spendthrift, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? They are accusing each other. They still think they're superior, right? The misers still can't understand those prodigal folks who spend all their money, right? Wasteful, ridiculous. The prodigal can't understand the misers, right? Why they hoard all their money. And so they're rebuking each other. But in the end, they're both experiencing almost exactly the same thing. They are just two waves crashing together over the gaping, ever hungry maw of Charybdis, right? The desire for money is an unquenchable desire, right? A spendthrift can never have enough money to spend, right? There is no money that a prodigal cannot blow. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. There is no money that will satisfy a miser, right? Your hoard can never be large, and you can never be completely sure, right? You still might need some more. The sin. Notice the sin hasn't been said here either. I still think that's true. He calls him a cursed wolf. So just going back and looking at, no. He's not said the word. The word being avarice, right? The plain label of the sin that is involved here, right? Greed. Fixation on money. Veronica, exactly the phrase that you used there. And Veronica, as you're suggesting, the point, of course, the larger moral point that Dante makes here is that both of them, both the misers and the prodigal, are equally fixated on money. They are both guilty of greed. They're both guilty of greed. They are both guilty of focusing on money and even on, in a sense, the things of the world, even though misers might practice self-denial, right? I agree. We do get a pretty strong clue in Plutus being in Plutus, right, and his association with the god of money. We're given a fairly clear direction there, but I don't think he's used the word avarice here. I'm not sure he does use the word avarice. I want to go back to the beginning. One of you was asking about this a little while earlier, and I didn't answer it. But let's come back to it. Thus we made our way down to the fourth ditch, to take in more of that despondent shore where all the universe's ill is stored, meaning hell, right? So, I mean, that sentence could be paraphrased. Thus we made our way down to the fourth level of hell in order to continue our tour of hell, right? To see more of hell, which, we're meant to see. But he characterized it as where all this universe's ill is stored. Justice of God, who has amassed as many strange tortures and travails as I have seen. Why do we let our guilt consume us so? Okay. He speaks in the first person, not just like describing his actions, right? This is an aside, which he hasn't done too much of, right? He'll have like a side conversation with Virgil or something, but this kind of a pure aside. And he's here talking to God, right? he's talking to God. Justice of God. He's invoking the justice of God. Why do we let our guilt consume us so? Who has amassed as many strange tortures and travails as I have seen? Why do we let our guilt consume us so? That seems like a fairly clear kind of connection to what we've been seeing before, right? He is characterizing what happens to the shades in hell as them being consumed by their own guilt. And again, like that in the ways that we've been talking about, right? What you chose in life, you get in hell, right? You are consumed not by an external thing, right? Exactly. You're not just sort of subjected to an external torture. You are consumed by your own guilt, by your own choices. Now, I can't help but think that his word choice, though, in this little invocation is a little conspicuous. Who has amassed as many strange tortures and travails as I have seen? Amassed? Like gathered together in like a hoard? I mean, when you're about to talk about misers and prodigal, when you're entering into the circle of avarice, to talk about amassing things is a rather conspicuous piece of word choice there. Who has amassed as many strange tortures and travails as I have seen? He has accumulated a great wealth of tortures and travails, right? He has seen much. What's he doing? Well, what do you do to not end up in this circle? If this is what avarice looks like, what does non-avarice, what does the virtue look like? Yeah, using your money properly. Again, it's Aristotelian, right? The Aristotelian, when I should have said more about this before when I talked about Aristotelian models versus like the Catholic patristic models. The primary premise of Aristotle's ethics is the golden mean, right? Aristotle teaches that extremes of anything are bad, and the golden mean is where virtue lies. And we see that illustrated very clearly here. Why do you hoard? Why do you squander? Right? So the misers and the prodigal are the two extremes on the axis of relationship with money. Right? So a proper relationship with money, a virtuous relationship with money, is one who is thrifty, charitable, spending in moderation, right? But it's Jameson, and I think Jameson, there was somebody else who was remembering this earlier too. Jameson is remembering Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol, who says, I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I guarded it on my own I guarded it on of my own free will, and by my own free will I wore it. Yes. Do I think that he's influenced by the Dantean conception? I sure do. Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, good. Okay, so now, so by the way, many through the Middle Ages said that although Aristotle's very wise, of course, and he's not wrong about there are many examples of where the mean between two extremes is certainly the course of wisdom, and that is where virtue lies. Like, he's not totally wrong, but he's also not totally right either. There are some things which are just binary, right? Like lust, for instance. There's not an appropriate amount of lust. Like, lust is just wrong.
illicit sexual desire is not good, even if you only have like some of it, right? And to keep yourself 100% pure of illicit sexual desire is not an extreme on the bad end. That's good, right? So that's basically that's the Augustinian model of virtue, which says you've got vice and virtue, which are basically opposites of each other, and it's not a choice of steering between two extremes. It's a choice of choosing the correct extreme, and not letting yourself even wander down the path. So you don't want to find the golden mean. You don't want to find the golden mean between pride and humility, right? It's not like complete humility is bad because it's an extreme, and like modest pride is the correct move. Like Augustine would say, heck no, right? So that's the Augustinian binary model, and the Aristotelian model is the mean between extremes. Anyway. Yeah. Now, Bruce, you're certainly right that there is a kind of a mean in sexual virtue, right? That is like having sex within your marriage is like perfectly okay, right? But it still does not really follow an Augustinian or an Aristotelian model. That is the Christian teaching about sexual virtue, because chastity, virginity, is an extreme, right? But it's a good extreme. It is the highest extreme. Marriage is not wrong, but it's not great either. Virginity's better. Everybody knows that. We are big fans of virginity in the Middle Ages, okay? I mean, big fans. Anyway, later. Exactly, Jameson. It's the second best. It's the second best thing. If you can't be pure. If you can't hack celibacy, then there's an alternative for you, which is an acceptable alternative, but it is still an inferior spiritual state to virginity. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. Everybody knows that. By the way, when I say everybody knows that, I'm referring to the way that medieval people think, right? I use that phrase not because I'm actually trying to assert that upon all of you, the contemporary audience. I'm trying to orient you to medieval thinking, right? So when I say everybody knows that, just take my word for it, okay? It means this is a thing which is almost universally accepted in the medieval world where this story is happening. So I should probably explain explicitly what I mean when I say things like that. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So, where was I? Oh yeah. Amassing tortures. That's right. So what is Dante going to do? In writing his poem, he is finding the mean. He has amassed these experiences, this vision, right? The strange tortures and travails that he has seen. And he is, so again, the word amassing connects him to the avaricious, which are surrounding him here, specifically the miserly and the prodigal. He is going to do neither one of those things. If he were a miser of these experiences, these observations he has amassed, if he were miserly, he would not write them, right? If he were prodigal, he would write indiscriminately. He's doing neither one, right? So Dante is going to maintain the mean. He is not going to be connected with either one of these crowds. He's not going to be pushing a rock. This seems to be one of the sins which he seems least drawn to, least connected with himself. And I, who felt my heart almost pierced through, requested Master, show me now what shades are these, and tell me if they all were clerics? Those tonsured ones, who circle on our left. I think those are the misers. And he to me, all these to left and right were so squint-eyed of mind in the first life. No spending that they did was done with measure. Their voices bark this out with clarity when they have reached the 2 points of the circle where their opposing guilts divide their ranks. These to the left, their heads bereft of hair, were clergymen and popes and cardinals, within whom avarice works its excess. There we go. We finally get the word, avarice. Only line 48. Look, we got it sooner than we got it with gluttony. Though here we had gotten even clearer indications, right? It was not quite so much of a guessing game. The why do you hoard, why do you squander was a pretty clear indicator there. Okay, so yeah, I think they almost all have tonsures, right? Tonsures, the baldnesses. So it like it was a thing. You're supposed to shave your head, like the crown of your head. That's what a tonsure is, and that's what he is perceiving. He's seeing that they all have tonsures on their heads, so they're all priests. Brian says, was this an incendiary statement, or did everybody know that some of the clergy were greedy? Okay, good. You guys are asking the questions that just exactly the question I was going to get to. I have never read Dante, or Chaucer for that matter, but especially Dante, with a modern audience that does not immediately ask the question, isn't Dante going to get in trouble for saying this? Answer, well, that ship has sailed, right? It's, worrying about getting in trouble with the Pope if you're Dante would be like, closing the barn door after the horses left the stable already, right? He's already in trouble with the church. So, he's already been banished. He's got little reason to hold back in his criticism of the Pope. So there's a certain freedom that Dante has, but I would say in general, right as Michelle says, in for a penny, in for a pound. That's a little bit more like it. That's actually a really good characterization, I think, of Dante's anti-clerical statements in the comedy. But yeah. But I would also add the modern world has a sweetly naive view of the power and authority of the medieval church. I think that medieval popes, there are many medieval popes who would get a little misty-eyed if they were to hear modern people talking about how powerful they assumed the medieval church was. They wish they were that powerful. The modern idea that, like, if you put a foot out of line, the church is going to come down on you like a ton of bricks and their authority is unchallengeable. That wasn't the way of it. I mean, that concept was out there, right? There were definitely medieval popes who wanted that, who strove for that kind of thing. Very few popes or, priests on the local level or bishops. Nobody actually wielded that kind of authority. Medieval people were fairly unruly as well, whether it's kings to the Pope. I mean, you don't even have to go to Henry VIII, right? Henry VIII is a slight extreme when it comes to unruliness. But even like a lot of people don't know this. Like William the Conqueror, right? William the Conqueror conquers England, and he's like, okay, I'm king of England now. And the Pope is like, great, I'm gonna appoint some like, and William says, oh, so by the way, I'm ruling England. I'm gonna appoint all the bishops. And the Pope is like, no, you will not. Rome will appoint the bishops. And Henry's like, no, you won't. Actually, I mean, anyway, it's just like that happened all the time, and the Pope is and William is like, and what are you gonna do, Sir Pope, right? Like down there in Rome, right? I'm waiting over here in England. When you get here, by the time you get here, or send anybody here, I'll have already appointed all the bishops already, whatever. I mean, it's not, see, exactly. Ben says, tell that to Galileo. Oh my goodness, don't get me started on Galileo. Yeah, the myth of Galileo, and please understand, I'm using the word myth. I'm not using the word myth in the modern sense. Modern people use the word myth to mean a thing that is not true, but people think it is, right? And that's not how I use the word myth at all. I'm using the word myth deeply influenced by Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, who use myth as a powerful story which conveys like a powerful truth, independent of whether or not it's true. The myth of the story of Galileo and the conflict between Galileo and the church is an incredibly powerful myth in the modern world. Incredibly powerful myth in the modern world. It is a deeply moving story, which has, but it's there's way more to the story than the modern myth version of the story. And yeah, did they did individual popes and bishops and stuff in fact wield power over other people? Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm not saying they were utterly powerless and it's all a lie. All I'm saying is lots of people expressed criticism, not necessarily of the church in general. Like even Dante's not expressing it of the church in general, just of many of these clergymen, popes, and cardinals, right? To say that there are many popes, cardinals, and clergymen who are corrupt, morally corrupt, in many places, that wouldn't even count as a controversial statement. Everyone would be like, well, given, I mean, obviously, right? But what does that have to do with it? So anyway, I mean, there's, it's just, like I say, it's not, I'm not saying that the medieval church had no authority or wielded no authority. I'm just saying it's not as simplistic as modern people talk about it or think about it. There's this modern idea that the medieval church was this absolute authority. It was not an absolute authority. Again, I kind of wished it was in some ways, but I mean, so much of the story of medieval Christendom is all about the ebbs and flows of different power struggles there. And Dante's story, political story, is very, very much at the heart of that. Again, I'm not doing a whole bunch with Dante's politics here, but the critical thing was like, who should have political authority? Because this is in Italy, right? And again, there's no such thing exactly as Italy in Dante's time. We've got all the different, the different separate city-states, but anyway, I mean, there's Rome. They're like right near Rome. And so Rome is trying to assert political control, like temporal control. And that's the point. That's the key word, right? Nobody was denying, well, most people weren't denying that the Pope had spiritual authority. But it's like there's the spiritual authority and there's the temporal authority. And the so like the Pope shouldn't be owning land. They shouldn't be ruling. They shouldn't be acting like a king over people, right? They should be dealing with spiritual matters exclusively. And Dante was a monarchist. Dante was supported the idea, like the emperor should have, like the temporal rulers, like the secular rulers, should have the secular political power. Rome, the Pope, should not have secular political power. That was the thing that got him primarily in trouble. That's what got him exiled. Because geographically close to Rome, that was hard to maintain. It was a little bit less controversial to talk like that, say, in northern France or in England, right? Or even in Germany, because again, you're not the actual like domains around Rome were ruled by the church. Anyway, it's complicated, but again, you could criticize. It's not gonna get you excommunicated to say some of the cardinals are scandalously corrupt. It's not going to get you excommunicated, right? Even if you said that to a bunch of cardinals, right? If you were to go up to a bunch of cardinals in Rome and say, some cardinals are really corrupt, what are they going to say? The cardinals that you're talking to. What are they probably going to say, you think? They're going to be like, oh, no, it is not possible. They're going to be like, you are so right. Them over there. You're absolutely right. Those like the guys on the opposite side of like whatever the political division is, currently within the, yeah, exactly. As Stephen Cover says, they would say, yeah, we're trying to fix that. Right. Exactly. That's, yeah. So it's not merely to say that, there are and have been sinful clergymen, popes, and cardinals who are probably in hell right now is not nearly quite so controversial as it sounds from a modern perspective. Okay, all right. It was a lot of fun, but it's getting late. I know I started late again tonight, so I wanted to go a little bit longer, but we'll come back to the avaricious. Things are going to start getting geographically complicated in the latter part of Canto 7 and then through Canto 8. This is one of the places where you'll notice one of the things I've not done is give maps. Lots of people have made maps of the underworld. Dante's descriptions almost invite maps, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But the narrative is a little bit less clean cut than a lot of the maps kind of make it appear, right? And I think that this is what the passages we're coming to, the stretch we're coming to, is some of those places where things are a little bit more uncertain, boundaries in that way. Okay. All right. So thanks, everybody. We will be back next week. I think we should be back through Wednesdays all the way down through Christmas Eve. I think Christmas is a Thursday, as I recall this year, which means that we'll be missing both 2 weeks in a row, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, but we'll be good until then. All right. So what to read? We're definitely I'm going to try to get through 9 next time. That's my ambitious goal. I'm going to try to get through 9. So we'll see. We'll see about that. We'll do the rest of 7, 8, and 9. Okay. Oh, Christmas is Friday this year. Right. I still think I'm not going to be able to do the 23rd. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, yeah, we're still going to lose 2 weeks at the end there. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will see you guys next week. Bye now.
The Mythgard Academy has been offering in-depth discussions of awesome books and films since 2013, completely free to attend and free to download. If you've enjoyed our discussions and would like to help them continue, please consider donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.